What's your favorite animal with a tail?
Favorite animal with a tail? Growing up, an alligator was my favorite.
How'd you
animal.
not choose dog? I'm so sorry. I'm like, you love your dogs.
I love my dogs.
You love your dogs. You bring your dogs. Like, I'm sure we're gonna post a picture actually of like you with a dog and canoe. Like, you bring your dogs everywhere.
I do love my dog. Okay, that's fair. Because I was trying to think of something different, right?
Okay, alligator's nice. I'll respect that.
Yeah, I mean, they're not nice. So dogs, I do love dogs. I love my dogs. I had my dog to cross the Rainbow Bridge a year ago. Like, it's so funny. Like, you ask, whenever I became a coach, I asked for change. I asked the universe, help me become the best version of myself. And man, did it answer. And I lost my forever puppy March of last year across the Rainbow Bridge. And that was a huge lesson in impermanence and change. Sorry to take your light little punny thing about
No, you're fine, you're fine. No, it's so true though.
Let's talk tails.
With over 2 decades of empowering leaders and transforming organizations, today's Tales with Taylor guest is a leadership transformation consultant, inspiring keynote speaker, author, and ICF Certified Coach whose impact stretches across industries from healthcare to manufacturing to defense. Known for his high-energy presentations and transformative leadership programs, my guest has inspired millions with his unique blend of personal grit and professional mastery. His insights have been featured in publications like Men's Health, Shape, you'll see why, and Reader's Digest. And his life work has ignited audiences worldwide. It's Ramsey Bergeron. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I feel kind of, that's a lot to live up to.
Hey, well, you're doing it. As you can see, well, good in shape. So shape made sense, right?
Well, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. But tell me a little bit about the tale of actually starting on your own. Not many people, start with their own business. So tell me a little bit about, your career journey.
Sure. And this isn't the first career that I've had on my own. I started off, I guess my first journey into entrepreneurialism was as a personal trainer. Was working at a gym, and I didn't like how much of the cut they were making. And I saw how much that they were making off of my back doing all the work. And I was the one that had established all the relationships with my clients. And so I had asked my clients, hey, if I go out on my own, it's like my Jerry Maguire moment, like, who's coming with me? Like, who's going to come with me? And a lot of my clients said, well, yeah, I don't have any allegiance to this health club. Like, you're the person that I know. Yeah. So went and rented space at a small gym and just had faith, just trusted that they would come with me, and they did. And that was in, 2010. And since then, I have had my own businesses.
That's excellent. And I know one of your businesses was being a DJ. So how do you go from personal trainer, DJ, and, business transformation consultant?
Fair enough. So I guess I lied. I've been a DJ since 1998.
Wow.
Back then, I was working for somebody else.
So you're a real DJ. You're more than just the push the button on the phone.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I actually had
You're
to
a real
learn
DJ.
Now, I'm not quite vinyl. Those guys are legends. Like, I started off, believe it or not, with mini discs. Okay. Like, that's how old it was. But then went to CDs. So I started off doing high school dances, working for another company in Jonesboro, Arkansas, my hometown. And then, yeah, I guess you called me out. So I moved to Memphis to start my own DJ company in 2001.
Mm-hmm. So this happens when you know the guests a little too much.
All right, that's fair. That's true. Yeah, and so I moved to start my own DJ company and went over there because I had relationships with schools and businesses because I'd worked with them for several years before that. And then 9/11 happens and everything, like, no one's booking stuff as much. So I had to get a job as a DJ in a bowling alley in Memphis. And I wasn't there long. I wasn't in the bowling alley long because it was a multi-venue concept called Jillian's. It's kind of like a Dave & Buster's. So they have bowling alley, video arcade, pool hall, and the bowling alley was dead when I started there. So I started coming up with marketing ideas to get it busier and got promoted to be the nightclub DJ upstairs. Kept coming up with ideas. And then within 5 years, I went from a DJ in a bowling alley to the national director of field marketing for 25 of these units across the country, which is what brought me to Arizona initially back in 2005. Did that for a little bit. And then I didn't want to be that old guy that I made fun of in the nightclub. I didn't want to be that guy at the time, like, look at that 30-year-old running around here. And I quit and got a job in the wellness industry. And that's how that transition got started from DJ into personal trainer.
Got it. Very nice. And I know that one of your keynotes is the power of your perspective. So tell me, what is the power of your perspective? What does that mean?
Great question. So often we identify with our lens or the story we tell ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that's so limiting because it's not what happens to us, it's how do we want to perceive it. There's a story that you've heard 1,000 times now about a wedding that I was DJing where the bride went to cut the cake, but the venue didn't lock the legs of her cake table out all the way. So the cake fell all over the floor. And as soon as I start telling that story to my audiences, people, like the reaction's like, oh my gosh, I bet she freaked out.
Everyone gasps because everyone knows before you even say the punchline, everyone knows what happens.
Yeah. Like, oh my God, the wedding's ruined, it's over. I'm like, well, actually, she started laughing. Yeah. And then everyone in the room started laughing. And I think that's such a powerful story because we can all identify with the expectations that are put on, a wedding and the bride's expectations of the cake. And at the end of the day, it didn't matter, right? It's about like, what's the story you want to tell yourself? And at the moment, I didn't realize how transformational that moment would be back then. But now that's kind of what I talk about in almost all of my presentations. And it's even the title of my book. Cake on the Floor, How to Handle Life's Unexpected Moments with Resilience and Grace. Because it's not about what happens to you. The perspective is about how do you want to view what happens to you and that still gives you agency to learn from the situation.
Yeah, for most people, I ask them, if you were to write a book, what would be the title of that book? But for your case, can you remind me again, what is the title of the book that you actually have written?
It's called Cake on the Floor, How to Handle Life's Unexpected Moments with Resilience and Grace.
Excellent. Yes, because that is a really, powerful and visual story. Like everyone just sees the beautiful decorations of the cake. They know it's at least a $500 cake. I just see $500 going on the floor, and that almost made me cry for her.
But you can always make more money, right? It's about
true.
And it's such a symbol for anything in your life that you didn't want to happen. Mm-hmm. So I tell my clients, there's always cake on the floor. That cake on the floor is anything from a flat tire on the way to work. The cake on the floor is about health diagnosis. It's a divorce. All right, it happened. Mm-hmm. What's within your control and how do you want to move forward and what do you want to learn from it?
I love it when you ask people if they like surprises.
Because a lot of people say that they do. Mm-hmm. But they like the surprises they like. Yeah. And this ties back into the flat tire, where if you walk out to your car and you see a $20 bill by the tire, it's like, oh, what a nice surprise. But what do you call a surprise you don't like? It's a problem, right? No. So I walk around the car, now there's a flat tire, like, well, now that's a problem. Yeah. So it's a matter of managing expectations. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think the power of perspective really comes in, because it's what you expect to happen. Mm-hmm. And then we tend to put ourselves in victim mode if things didn't go the way that we wanted them to go. Things should have gone this way. And finding out how people manage stress. And that's really what a lot of stress is. If I say, if this hand is reality, this hand is the cake on the floor, mm-hmm. and this hand is, I wanted to eat that cake with my guests. Mm-hmm. That gap is stress. And that's all stress really is the gap between reality and the expectation of reality.
Interesting. So why do you think that this, education to really understand your perspective and how to react to situations and control your actions, why is it so important for corporate organizations to provide this training to their workforce?
Because your perspective really affects every element of your life. Mm-hmm. And if especially when we're talking about this difference between expectations and reality, if you encounter a problem at work, especially in our perfectionist Western society, where we want everything to be done perfectly, we don't ever want to make mistakes, we want to just, year over year, we want to just maximize everything. Mm-hmm. Perfectionism is the enemy of growth. Mm. And if we're always looking for perfection, and if your team is afraid to learn from a situation and they're focused on what they did wrong and they're beating themselves up, mm-hmm. then they can't find the lesson in what they're doing. And that limits us so much because we judge it as wrong. Mm-hmm. So one of the first things I do whenever I work with companies is ask them, are you focusing on the lesson or the loss? Because if you're so focused on the loss, you're not focused on, all right, what can we learn? How is this a beneficial thing? Because whenever I ask my clients, like, name something you've done perfectly. They can't. They never can.
Yeah.
But that's the benchmark that we all strive for, and it's unrealistic. So that's why I think being able to have the perspective of what can I learn from the situation. Another very important and helpful shift is to shift from contempt to curiosity. Like to try to understand, well, all right, things didn't turn out the way that I want. Instead of beating myself up or be mad at my team about it, all right, well, why is this the result that we have? Is this because of internal factors, external factors? What all influenced the way that this went? And when we begin to view things with curiosity, there's a lot more that we can learn and take away from that's going to be beneficial for our team in the future.
And would that just be being more mindful of every situation you're in then, doing those kind of activities of, okay, why did I feel this way? Why did I do this?
I think mindfulness is the key. And asking yourself, why do I feel this way, is such an important question, because I think feelings is one of the most underutilized things that impact managers that they don't discuss. There's a statistic, I can't remember the study that did it, but 75% of people that lose their jobs, it's due to emotional intelligent components. Wow. So it's the inability to handle interpersonal conflict, to manage stress, or inability to lead during times of conflict or crisis. Yet we're so quick to look at performance, but not realizing that we're all human beings at the end of the day, and to account for that.
You know, I find it interesting that when you look at, entrepreneurial and business content, they'll suggest you fail fast. It's even suggested, like, it's okay to fail fast. But then when you're a W-2 worker, it's almost, there's that fear of failure so much for your job security. Why do you think there's that disconnect between, being the entrepreneurial mindset versus the W-2?
I think with W-2, I think it's starting to change. Yeah. I think, but in the past, it has been, we'll just replace you, right? Like if you don't do the job 100%, we'll find somebody else to do it. As an entrepreneur, I'm not going to fire myself and bring in someone else. And I think it also getting clarity around the word failure. Like we say, fail fast. Well, what does failure mean? Because I prefer to look at it like I'm learning.
And same thing with success. Like, what does success really mean? Success, I read somewhere it was just, you're never going to meet success unless you define what success means for you yourself. Because one person's success could be going on vacation for a month at a time. I couldn't imagine being away from my house for a month. Like, that sounds terrible to me. But for me, success is like being able to go to a place with my kids for like a weekend. Because anything more than a weekend's way too much with children.
Well, fair. But I think even when you're talking about what does success mean to you, you're right. It's about getting clarity. So I had a client I was working with who he says, I want to be financially independent. Okay. I said, all right, what's the number? He's like, well, I never thought about it. I'm like, well, what's the specific number?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, then what are you chasing for? Like, what are you chasing? We don't even know. And if we don't know what we're going after, we're always going to feel unfulfilled. And I had another client who he had his son was a big video gamer, and dad was mad because dad was a doctor. And he's like, I want you to write me a 2-page essay on why I want to be successful. And so I asked him, well, what does success mean to you? Yeah. He said, well, I don't want my son to ever have to worry about money. And then after he sat for me, he's like, well, I also want him to have a happy family. And then to your point, he started to realize it meant so much more than just what was in the bank account.
Because it can be for some people. And I think it does depend on your own personal journey for that, definitely.
Well, I think what a lot of people don't realize is it's never the goal. So let's talk about your weekend with the kids away.
Yeah.
How will you feel if you get to have a weekend with the kids doing something?
Gosh, it depends on how the kids' moods are. See, there's a whole other factor with that. Are they good listeners, or are they, toddler tantrum kids? So. Fair. But yes, no, to answer your question and not to make it difficult. Yeah, it feels great. Like, being with the family is the one thing, I love having my business, but being a mom was the one thing I always wanted to be. I always wanted to be a mom. And how do you feel now that you're a mom? I'm accomplished, successful. Yeah, no, I'm grateful every single day. I'm grateful that I have one of each flavor, a boy and a girl. So yeah. Yeah. Well, because a lot of people don't realize that being a mom is not the goal. It's feeling amazing. It's those feelings that we're always emotional creatures. Yeah. We think we're chasing something. So I've done 8 full distance Ironman triathlons, and I would always feel so, gosh, whenever I crossed the finish line, I felt like, yes, like I matter. Like
I feel like I've done something, I'm accomplished now. But feelings fade. And so I always caution my clients, like whenever they set a goal, it's like, well, how will you feel when you hit that goal? That's the real goal, is the feeling. And a lot of times people don't realize that feelings will every feeling we've ever had is impermanent and changes. And once you recognize that you're chasing a feeling, well, why don't we just feel that in this moment? Like, I'm not saying don't still have the goal, but you can feel accomplished without, because what happens if you set your mind like, I will feel great once I've done this, and then you get there and you've done it and you don't feel that way, then what happens?
Yeah, and then with our society, it's always, okay, then what next? And then what next?
So to answer an earlier question, I started writing another book that I'm kind of still working on, but it's called Chasing the Rabbit: Why Achieving Success is Never Enough. And that's why I did 8 Ironmans, because I would do one, I'd feel incredible for a couple of days, and then empty. Like, all right, what now? What now? So just needing to continually, and I find this a lot with my type A clients, like a lot of C-suite, where we're only as good as our last accomplishment. We're only as good as the last thing that we've done. And we never find peace and contentment in our life whenever we live that way.
I can believe that, because I even just think, like, I definitely identify with type A personality. And, you know, we've now been in business for over 10 years, but I don't know if we really celebrate it. It was like, okay, well, now I need to get to 15. Now I need to get to 20. Now I need to do this. Now we need to get to, you know, however much money of revenue. And, you know, it's just, it's always, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing to do, accomplish? And
this ties back into mindfulness, which you mentioned earlier, because we're always preparing for the next moment. Like, I can't wait till I hit 10 years in business. You hit 10 years and then you're not even enjoying it, because now you're looking at the next milestone. Think about it like vacation. So if you're going on a 10-day vacation, the last 4 days when you're at work, you're like, man, I can't wait to be on vacation. I'm so looking forward to it.
Oh
then
gosh, I'm so stressful 4 days before a vacation.
Oh, really?
Oh, I am beyond stressful, because I just feel like I need to get 1.5 million things done and set. Like, I always feel like I need to get everything done I would have had done during that vacation before the vacation.
All right. Yeah, but then what happens when you get on vacation?
Then I'm an unplug. That's the one thing. I'm very good at being unplugged. Once I'm on vacation, I don't even know where my phone is. I don't know where my computer is. I'm off the grid. Well,
but for the first 2 days when you're on vacation, are you like, wow, I can't believe I'm here, like, and working through those guilty feelings of not being at work?
Oh gosh, no. I am like, once I'm on vacation, I'm
nice,
full vacation mode. Insta. The second I'm in that car or in that plane or wherever, no, I let loose right away.
That's fantastic, because a lot of people have trouble unplugging like that, right? Like they're so, because I work with people that their spouses get mad at them. It's like, put your phone away. We're here on vacation now. And then what about the last couple of days of vacation? Are you, I can't believe I've got to go back to work. Like, do we start to?
I'll try to catch up on emails ahead of time. I probably will do that the extra day ahead, just to get a little catch up. Definitely. Yeah.
And then when you're back from vacation, the first couple of days, it's, man, I had so much fun when I was on vacation.
And now there's so much piled up laundry.
But then we only.
But it's true, you know, and it's enjoying that moment. And why can't we let it carry on and into our work too, of that enjoyment instead?
Yeah, well, that's part of it. But then it's finding the enjoyment while you're at work instead of reminiscing about vacation. Because if you're reminiscing, you're no longer in the present. You're not being mindful either way. Yeah. So then you're still stuck in the past of being on vacation. But how could you take that feeling? I guess when you're thinking about why vacations are relaxing, because even if something tends to go wrong, we just roll with it. Yeah. It's just something like, all right, well.
Because there's not a schedule, which is, I think, because I am such a schedule, literally we have dinner time written on the schedule.
Oh, really? On vacation too? Or
no, not on vacation. Okay. That's the thing. On vacations, it's willy-nilly. I actually just let things happen as they should happen because we're on vacation. But when it's home, we have to eat by this time. You're going to brush your teeth at this time. We're going to try to go to bed at this time. And
well, so on vacation, do your kids just kind of stay up whenever they want, or do you kind of have a bedtime for them?
We attempt to stay on a similar sleep schedule, but if we're watching a movie or if they want to read an extra book, we're more loose with that.
Okay. With kids, it's still different, right? Because you want to get them structure and routine, and it makes sense when you're at home and kind of have those things laid out. Yeah. But whenever we tend to view work through just a different lens than we do the rest of our life. And I was working with a client who's a manager who says, I work with idiots. I hate when people show up late. I'm paraphrasing here.
Yeah.
But that's the energy, right? Like it bothers me when my employees aren't being productive because like I know how to do it. They should know how to do this by now. Mm-hmm. And we did a 360 assessment and everyone kind of rated him and all right, yeah, well, they kind of saw, I'm like, all right, well, you're not hiding this well.
Yeah.
He also happens to coach his daughter's soccer team. And his daughter's 10. I'm like, well, tell me about that. Yeah. You know, he's coaching the soccer team and there's a lot of first-time kids on there. He's coaching them and they're girls. And as we're talking through, I'm like, well, tell me about like what happens if a girl doesn't make a goal or you got someone crying. He said, well, I just talk with them and I encourage them. We do these drills and stuff. And I'm like, well, why can't you do that at work? Mm-hmm. Like, why can't you just take that? And watching the light bulb go off for him that he's already doing it.
Yeah.
And he's already knowing how to view people objectively and take them as they are and then applying that to work. I have another client who's a manager for a regional restaurant chain. And in his spare time, he likes woodworking. And he's frustrated because, traveling from restaurant to restaurant, seeing all these issues, and he just can't understand why things aren't the way that he wants them to be. And when I asked him about woodworking, I'm like, well, what happens if he likes to build tables. Mm-hmm. What happens if you sand a leg down too much? He's like, well, just throw it out and put another one in there. I'm like, well, think about how effortless that is. Think about how it doesn't bother you. It just is. Mm-hmm. But at work, we don't let things just be. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, it has to be perfect. And allowing yourself to have that freedom to learn, it frees you from unnecessary stress.
I love that. Definitely. So beyond your book, what would be a tale that you've either read or watched as a movie that you absolutely love, whether it's just for entertainment or that has inspired you?
Gosh, I mean, of course, I'm a giant nerd at heart. So immediately Lord of the Rings or Shawshank Redemption pop into my head. Tales that have inspired me. I don't know why Batman's popping in there. I should probably give you something more substantial.
Batman, though. No, Batman's definitely like my favorite superhero. So for me, because he's like a real person that, you could relate to because it's like he's using his money for good. He's using his money to make gadgets and to just save the world.
Yeah, there's no superpowers.
Right, exactly. His superpowers is just like his money.
Yeah. It's a great superpower to have.
Right, it is. It really can change the
world. But books that I've read that have meant a lot to me, I'm a big fan of Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural. Big fan of Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. Okay. I think a book that really transformed my mindset was, when I was a personal trainer up until 2021. But when COVID hit, I built a gym in my yard. Oh, wow. Because every gym was shut down in state. Yeah. I mean, well, what's within my control, right? I could have said, well, this is, can I say bullshit?
You can say whatever you want. This is your show.
This is bullshit. Like I can't work. But what can I do? I can train outside. And a lot of my clients were immunocompromised. Well, they were older. They were in their 50s and 60s and they were very concerned about COVID.
Yeah. So, especially in the beginning. I thought I killed my dad. I had gotten sick right when COVID came to be. And I was just paranoid.
So I went to a park nearby the gym that I was at. Yeah. I actually went there a week before every gym was shut down because my clients were concerned. And so I'm like, all right, this is the park we're going to train at. And then as soon as COVID shut all the gyms down, every trainer in a 5-mile radius was using the same park and doing these big classes with 20 people. And all right, what can I control? Right. So I'm like, I'm just going to go to my yard. I had a nice outdoor yard. I guess that's redundant. I have an outdoor yard, but yeah. So I built a front yard. I built a
just
gym.
Letting all your neighbors know.
Well, I did it first. At first it was in the front yard, and then I moved it to the back. And I built a gym. I put down turf. I paid 3 times retail because this was like trying to get workout equipment.
Anything.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And I controlled what I could. I controlled the space, and then there's a documentary that came out about the Chicago Bulls called The Last Dance.
The Last Dance was so good.
And I watched that, and Phil Jackson has always intrigued me. I'm like, what's his story, right? Because he's always so cool and calm, but he's coached like the best players that have ever been. And I watched that documentary, and I'm like, all right, he's Buddhist. What is Buddhism? What is that? Because I grew up in a half Catholic, half Muslim household. It was very
that's interesting.
Yeah, my parents are the United Nations, and so I was born in Switzerland. No, I wasn't born in Switzerland. I was born in Kuwait.
It sounds like Switzerland, having Catholics and Muslims get along.
Well, yeah. So, but we lived in Switzerland in Geneva, and then we moved to Arkansas. My dad retired. So a little bit of a culture shock with that. And so I wanted to understand why Phil Jackson was so calm. I'm like, how does he always, like, you're dealing with Dennis Rodman, you're dealing with all these extreme personalities. And it was in June of 2020, I got an audiobook called The Heart of the Buddhist Teachings by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Okay.
And I remember listening to that audiobook, and it was so fascinating because Buddhism is a philosophy, not a religion. You can be a Buddhist Christian, you can be a Buddhist Muslim, a Buddhist Jew, be a Buddhist, whatever you want to be. I find that some of its tenets are very similar to Stoicism. It's just about accepting reality. You are not your thoughts, you're not your feelings, you're the observer. It's very Eckhart Tolle also. And about 3 weeks after I started the audiobook, I got the call that my best friend was in a coma. And I talk about this in my keynote and in my presentations. And he had drank himself into the coma during COVID and eventually passed away. I got to be with him when he passed away. And had it not been for that book and allowing me to just be present with him, I don't know how I would have handled it, because we'd known each other since we were 5 years old. And just allowing myself to be present with him and realize I can't change this. I can't wish this to be anything different. All I can do is just be here with my friend. And that's where the mindfulness really mattered to me the most in my life. Was I'm just going to be here. And that book really gave me that perspective that I would have never had without it.
What was the name of the book again?
The Heart of the Buddhist Teachings by Thich Nhat Hanh.
I'm going to look that one up, definitely. Yeah, I've been really intrigued by Buddhist teachings. And like hearing Phil Jackson's Buddhist, the creator of Nike is a Buddhist. And so these really powerful people whom, have been under so many pressures. And it's like, okay, how do you stay so calm? And I think that's something where, any way you could stay calm, I think it's better not only for your inners, making sure you're not having, anything going on in your body, any kind of free radicals going crazy just because you're stressed out. But then also, for myself, I really try to think about how am I showing up for my kids? Yeah. Because anything that I'm doing, they're just going to mirror that. Yeah. It's like anytime your kid reacts, it's like, well, sometimes you got to think, okay, where'd you get that from? That's so true. Because our kids don't do what we tell them. They do what they see us do. And whenever I'm working with a client and they're talking about their kid's behavior, and then maybe 2 sessions later, we're talking and I'm like, well, and then the client tells me something they did. And I'm like, well, you see now, maybe we're little Joey, and watching those light bulbs go off, it really is very transformative. Because if you're not doing it for you, do it for them. And there is something I want to clarify here, because whenever we're talking about showing up, being calm, I want to make sure that people understand that the way to do that is to accept when you are not. So if you're having an emotional reaction, I think it's important to understand, to feel that emotion. Emotions are valid. And to say, don't be angry, don't be upset, doesn't work. It's like saying, don't think of the pink elephant. But you don't have to let that emotion rule you. It's more why this literally, because I've been trying to practice this truly recently. And, I was so angry that I'd stop, where's this anger coming from? It's just like, okay, what am I really that angry that the kids put their shoes all over the floor? Or why am I really angry? And so it's sometimes too, having to take that step in that moment to go, okay, a bit deeper. Because a lot of times it's not just what's on the surface is what's making you angry. Well, it's usually not. It's usually, this is a trigger. And I don't like using that word because it's got so many connotations, but it's true. It's a trigger of something that happened in the past that the situation reminds you of, and you're not even angry about this, or this represents something that's unresolved from earlier. And the best way to think about this is, if you hear a song that takes you back to an exact moment in your life. That's a very obvious trigger. This reminds me of my junior year whenever I was driving doing this thing. Or a scent. This reminds me of being at grandma's house for the holidays. But we don't recognize that situations do the exact same thing, but it's not as obvious until we start peeling the layers of the onion and recognizing that, this trigger of my kids is because anything. And usually it goes back to childhood. And why is that? Why is there data on why so much, they say all people have gone through some sort of trauma and it's all stemmed from childhood. Why? Why is this? 50% of our subconscious programming is laid in by the time we're 7 years old. Wow.
And just a lot of those, because that's a lot of the first. That's the first time you've encountered this or that. And you tend to form an opinion or a judgment based on that. So if you're 5 years old and the first time you encounter a dog, it bites you. Then you can be 40 years old walking or watching a movie at home and you see a dog growling on TV, your heart starts to race, you start to get anxiety. That has nothing to do with the fact you're watching a movie. It's because of that initial encounter with a dog that this situation is reminding you of. And it can be the same thing. I was working with an executive once and she worked with a man who was a good old country boy, like a big 6'5", like big guy, very passionate about how he felt about things, nicest guy, sweetest guy. But whenever he started to speak in meetings, she's like, I can't look him in the eye. I start to cower. And she would find herself in tears after these meetings. And so I asked her during one of our sessions, I'm like, well, tell me about another point in your life when you had a large man who you felt like you couldn't stand up to. And a light bulb went off for her and she immediately started like, oh my God, I hadn't thought about that in 20 years. And recognizing that it wasn't about the situation in her corporate office. It was this thing that happened to her in her childhood. And just that awareness began to allow her to do the work. And a lot of times the reason we don't remember these things is because we suppress it. Because at that point in our life, we haven't developed the tools to be able to effectively work through it. So we bury it deep down. It's a protective mechanism. And you can have two people in the same situation and one will develop long-term trauma from it and one won't. It depends on if you're able to effectively work through or communicate how you felt in that situation. That's what causes long-term trauma, is the inability to work through effectively what happens to you. It's not the situation. Again, it's back to perspective of the situation.
So is that why it's important for people to connect with, a coach to kind of go through some of these motions and go through the work?
Yes, coach and therapy. So coaching and therapy are different. Because there are some therapists that, therapy's changed my life tremendously. But I think having a professional help you be able to identify what patterns, behaviors, limiting beliefs aren't serving you anymore, objectively is life-changing. It truly is life-changing.
And so what would be your difference between a therapist and a coach, perhaps? Because for me, I don't have either. And so, but I've had coaches. And so I could definitely have the respect. I've definitely had coaches in my life, and I like the idea of a coach. Because when I think of a coach, I think of someone who's going to kind of give me some drills to do, give me some feedback, and then more drills to keep, getting whatever my goal is, closer to my goal. So what would you say are some of the differences between a coach and a therapist, and what would be some, perhaps some guidelines, or how would I choose whom I should connect with, whether I should connect with a coach or should I connect with a therapist?
Well, I'm going to give you two different answers.
Okay.
And coaching is only a portion of what I do. And that's why, I call myself a leadership transformation consultant, because there's a lot of different elements. Okay. But between coaching and therapy, the way that I was taught to whenever I was going through coaching certification was therapy focuses on the past, figure out why you are where you are today. Okay. Where coaching says, this is where you are, where would you like to be? And it's a little bit more forward thinking in that regard. Now, there's another definition. I was a behavioral health coach for a company for a short period of time. And they defined it where coaching helps people on a shorter term, where therapy is for the larger, deeper issues that are going to require more work. So sometimes I will refer someone out to therapy. If someone comes in with an issue for coaching, says, hey, I want to be able to improve this. And after 3 or 4 sessions, there's something that's a lot deeper that they can't work through. It may be a referral for therapy.
Got it. So if there's ever something that's in the past that's maybe holding you back for, is that what it's the identifier almost? If they can't move forward because of a limited belief perhaps, or because of something that they need to work through, it's almost like a prereq to go through therapy first?
Well, I wouldn't say that. There's some clients I work with that also have a therapist, and there's some clients that I work in conjunction with their therapist. Okay. So it really depends. It would be a disservice to say the coaching doesn't look at the past, because we have to figure out where this limiting belief came from. So I guess it's a matter of severity and education. I mean, I will say therapists have spent their lives doing what they do. They have training on deeper levels. I think in regards to choosing somebody, it's a matter of resonance. Because I know people that have gone to one therapist and said, well, therapy is not for me. I'm like, well, did you marry the first person you dated? You know, it's like you have to find the right fit. You have to find the right person to be able to, because it's all about communication and having somebody that either has had a similar story or somebody that has the empathy or breadth of life to be able to hold space for you and understand your story. I think there's a lot of factors that go into that.
Awesome. So what are the different ways that people can work with you? You know, they can hire you as a keynote, but you also do, you know, small groups and large group workshops. So what are the different ways that people can learn from you?
So I do keynote speeches, talking about the power of perspective. And companies that just generally bring me in when, in any capacity, when there's an issue with mindset or turnover or burnout or stress or change. So a lot of what I do deal with is change dynamics or change management. And how often does change happen?
All the time. Yeah. It's one of the things that you can guarantee.
Yeah. The only death, taxes, and change, I guess. But change is always occurring, but it's when change is so great or unexpected that employees or companies don't know how to deal with it. So I do a keynote presentation. I also have an assessment that shows people how stress changes how they show up. So a lot of people have aptitude assessments like the DISC, Strength Finders, Hogan, Myers-Briggs. I have an assessment that I'm certified through IPEC called the ELI, or Energy Leadership Index. And it shows people on a regular day how they show up. And then this is how you show up when you're stressed. And I think that determines your life so much more than what you know. It's how you're showing up. How does stress affect you? Because that's what's going to affect your legacy, is whether you're reacting or responding to stressful situations. So I have that assessment, and companies will bring me in. And if I have everyone take the assessment, I can average the results, and it'll show them their culture. Like, this is the culture of your company. I also do individual coaching. I do group coaching as well, so team dynamics. And then I do have workshops on stress and stress management and emotional intelligence in the workplace. And then I also function as a consultant, going in with companies that are experiencing either rapid growth or rapid change, and just really kind of deep diving, like spending 1 week within the organization to help them see blind spots that maybe they don't see, and advise to get clarity around what the mission is, what are their values, and really dial in to areas of opportunity to help them grow and succeed.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So, you know, Tales with Taylor here. We like to get a little punny. What's your favorite animal with a tail?
Favorite animal with a tail? Growing up, an alligator was my favorite.
How'd you not choose dog? I'm so sorry. I'm like, you love your dogs.
I love my dogs.
You love your dogs. You bring your dogs. Like, I'm sure we're gonna post a picture actually of like you with a dog and canoe. Like, you bring your dogs everywhere.
I do love my dog. That's fair. Because I was trying to think of something different, right?
Okay, alligator's nice. I'll respect that.
Yeah, I mean, they're not nice. So dogs, I do love dogs. I love my dogs. I had my dog that crossed the Rainbow Bridge a year ago. Like, it's so funny. Like, you ask, whenever I became a coach, I asked for change. I asked the universe, help me become the best version of myself. And man, did it answer. And I lost my forever puppy March of last year across the Rainbow Bridge. And that was a huge lesson in impermanence, in change. Sorry to take your light little punny thing about
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, it's so true though.
Yeah.
Because like I know when I lost my Karma, my little soul kitty. Yeah, it's just it's tough. You know, it definitely makes you death like that realizes, you know, that nothing's permanent. And you gotta enjoy every moment that you can. Yeah. Yeah,
and there's one of two different ways you can look at it. You can either say, "What's the point? Like everything's gonna die." Or there's a story.
That was my mom's stance. So when our last pet passed, it was no more pets because what's the point? We're just going to get sad about it until luckily we grew up back east. So one day it was winter time and a cat came to our porch and I was like, we can't let it stay. So then we got a cat.
Got another cat.
Yeah. Saved the cat.
Well, there's a story in Buddhism called "The Glass Is Already Broken." Are you familiar with the story?
I don't think so, actually.
So the students went to a monk and said, "Hey, how can you be happy in a world full of impermanence, right? Like, what's the point?" And so the monk said, "Look at this glass. Like, I like this glass that holds my water admirably. It glistens when I hold it in the sun. But one day, this glass will break. I'll either accidentally knock it off a table or the wind will blow it off the table. And if I realize in my mind the glass is inevitably already broken, I'm going to enjoy it while I have it." And it's such a great metaphor for life because what makes a precious moment precious is the fact that it's not going to last forever. So we want our kids to stay small. We want our dogs to always be here, but we don't recognize that they're here now. Like whenever I was married, we had a Jack Russell. And I remember when he was getting older, my wife at the time would cry every day, like, oh my gosh, he's getting so old. Yeah. I was like, well, he's here now. Yeah. Like, do you want the last year of his life to have just for him to watch you cry? So when you look at impermanence, it makes you appreciate what you have. So when my dog crossed the rainbow bridge, I still had another dog, Gizmo. And yes, I mourned Baxter, but I have Gizmo here now. Right. And so leaning into the people that we do still have, and that's, I think, how you live a life of no regrets, is by really being present with the people in your life and building those connections and relationships while you have them. That's what it's about. So that when they are gone, it's like, you know what? I have no regrets because I truly gave every interaction my best and was present and really connected with them while they're here.
Totally. Yeah. I thought we used to have chickens and I thought it was so beautiful so we had Louise and Yoko, and when Louise passed away, my son, his first reaction was, poor Yoko. Yoko's all alone now. And I was like, oh, it's just so sweet that you weren't upset about losing Louise so much, but you were just thinking about the being that's still around. Yeah. And how is she feeling with this instance? And yeah.
That's great. How old was he when he had that realization?
I was 4. He was 4 years old.
See, we could learn so much from kids, right? Yeah. And that's, they say that we spend the first half of our life learning and then the second half unlearning. And then working with people, whether it's an executive, whether it's with a mom, or even I have a couple of people's kids that I work with, older, like they're late teens, we're already whole. We don't need anything to be complete. We don't need anything to be the best version of ourselves. It's a matter of stripping away the things that don't serve us, all the things that are locked in by the time we're 7 years old that don't do us any good. And there's a quote about Michelangelo. Someone asked Michelangelo, how do you see the statue of David in that block of marble? Yeah. They said, well, the statue's always been there. I'm just removing the parts that aren't the statue. I think that's such a good analogy for us as whole, complete human beings. There's nothing that we need to make us feel whole. I think so many of us have core shame around being deficient or being human. And by embracing our imperfections and recognizing we're already whole, that's the key to not being stressed, just giving yourself permission to just exist. It's so freeing. So, and kids have that. They're not conditioned. If you ask a kid, why are you playing? If you ask your son, why are you playing? What does his answer be?
Because fun. Yeah.
I'm playing, right? And we lose that as adults. We just lose that just being. And I think that's so important to just kind of come back to finding peace and changing our perspective.
Definitely. I highly agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, kids are interesting. They definitely are just so honest and just so raw. And I wonder, is it because that they haven't been conditioned of what we should be, perhaps? Maybe it's that rawness of just living that they get to see life in that way and actually have better perspectives, perhaps, than what we do of just thinking everything analytically of, well, how should I? Yeah. What's the proper way, perhaps? And then the self-talk then comes in of, how you should have done, which is one thing I've really been working on. It's the self-talk. If I mess something up, huge. I'll say, oh, I'm so dumb. And then I've been quick to be like, wait, I'm not dumb. I'm just speeding at things. I'm rushing. I have a million things on my mind, but it's just amazing how instantly I think we're very prone to just that negative self-talk. And again.
Well, and then, so you do a great job. So glad you shared that because then you don't spiral. Some people will be like, I'm so dumb. God, why am I talking to myself? And then they spiral. They beat themselves up for beating themselves up. Instead of saying wait a minute, and doing what you did. I don't want to talk bad to myself. How do I want to talk to myself? It's kind of like if you're driving and you get lost. Oh, yes. If you recognize you're lost, now you can choose to get back on the road. But if you're like, oh, I'm lost. I'm so dumb. I can't believe I missed my exit. Then you're not doing anything to get back. So recognizing either that you're having a reaction that you don't want to have, that you're having negative self-talk you don't want to have, the awareness that you're doing that, this is where I feel like instead of self-improvement, focus on self-compassion. It's okay that you did that. How do you want to be? And then just give yourself that grace and adjust next time.
And I know that's a tale I wish I would have told my younger self that, sooner, to not have that negative self-talk, because it's amazing how much self-sabotaging can happen.
Yeah.
What's a tale you wish you would have told your younger self?
That I would give myself permission to just be me. Permission is, I think, we could all give ourselves more permission to just be who we want to be and not wear the mask of the expectations of everyone else around us. A lot of times it's that of our parents, our early caregivers that told us like, no, you have to be a doctor. You've got to be a lawyer. This is what you've got to do. Yeah. And just fear of letting them down. Just give yourself permission to live the life you want to live. Love who you want to love. Live where you want to live. We're so bound by fear.
Why is that? Why do you feel like, because obviously I guess with parents, they are they are everythings when you're kids. And so perhaps it's why there's that such fear of acceptance and to make them happy.
Well, because some of it boils down to abandonment issues. Like if we don't do what our parents say, we're worried, like, oh my God, my parents aren't going to look. And sometimes it is conditional. Like think about how growing up, I know my mom didn't believe in therapy and my dad passed away when I was 12. And so if we're conditioned that our worth is based on our grades or our achievement, then we're tied to that. I'm not valuable unless I overperform. And shame usually becomes apparent in both ends of the spectrum. People will either take their shame and become super high performers, be the CEO of a company and overexcel, or they will use shame to be overwhelmed and have addictions and feel burned out. Or
terribly a combination of the two.
Well, that's true, right? And it's the same core wound. It's I'm not good enough. And so I will either overexcel to prove my worth, or I will believe the negative self-talk and go into a shame spiral and never really try or accomplish anything. And I think when you were talking about your son and how he just likes to play, what children have is curiosity. Like, I'm just going to play just because I want to have fun. I want to enjoy it. But as adults, we're so scared to make the wrong decision. We're so scared that we're not perfect, that we will be judged by our employer, by our employees, by our spouse, by our children, by our community, that we don't take risks and we play it safe. And then we live a life that we don't even recognize or like because I never did anything that I wanted to do. And fear keeps you trapped. People would rather prefer the familiar prison than experience unknown discomfort.
Literally, when I started my own business, my mom was saying, well, the enemy you know is better than the enemy you don't know. So it's just such a common thing that people are like, well, just live in the pain. At least you know what that is.
Yeah. And I have people, especially as entrepreneurs, they're like, well, aren't you scared? Aren't you worried about like the income coming in? I'm like, well, aren't you worried that you may get laid off tomorrow and that's it? Like you have no control over your destiny just because you think you're getting like a paycheck every 2 weeks. That's great if that fulfills you. But if it doesn't, if you have a dream that you want to do, like if the worst thing that happens is you go back to doing what you're doing now, what do you have to lose? Try. Just try. That way you know. Whenever I shifted to becoming what I'm doing now, like speaking and consulting 4 years ago, I took a chance. I had a very successful personal training business. I had clients on a wait list. And I said, this doesn't fulfill me anymore. I want to help people on a more profound level. I can go back to training. I can go back to DJing if I wanted to go back to DJing. But I don't want to be 30 years down the road from now knowing that I never tried. I never followed this. Because my friend who passed away, he was 42 years old. And it made me think, what am I doing? What am I doing? I don't have that much time. I'm on the back nine, and I want to enjoy it. I want to make a difference and know that I'm not regretting having given it a shot.
Yeah, I love that. So I think with that, just give it a shot if you are on the fence of starting your own business, of literally doing any kind of change, because any change is scary. I know I moved to Arizona without knowing a single soul, but I wanted to change. I wanted to get away from the snow, cold, humidity. At the time, expensive living. Now it's a little equal, but and you just got to sometimes just take the leap. And I'm grateful for my grandma, because my grandma was the one who said those things. It's like, what's the worst that can happen? You can always fall back and just go back to a restaurant and work at a restaurant. You can always just fall back and come back to Maryland, I'm sure. You can always do something, but yeah.
And think about the irony of well, are you afraid of change? Well, we just said change is inevitable.
Yeah.
Change is going to happen. So wouldn't you rather shape your change? Wouldn't you rather create the change that you seek versus being a victim of change and this isn't fair? Well, okay, if you don't feel it's fair, what do you want to do? Life's not fair, but how do you want to view the cake on the floor?
Yeah. I want to laugh about it, and let's all laugh about it together. So how can people stay connected with you and always know about when you're having a new workshop or you're having a new program or a new book release? How can we stay connected with you?
Website, bergeronwellbeing.com. And my podcast, Power Up Your Perspective. It was called Break Your Ego, Find Your Soul, but I've reformatted it because I really want to help people. It's a lot more interviews now. So I want to do kind of like this to help interview people. So but bergeronwellbeing.com is the best way to get all information for me.
Excellent. Bergeron Well-Being. Do you have links to your social media accounts on there too, so people can stay connected on social?
Links to social on there, links to the podcast, links to workshops, virtual and in person. Yeah, everything will be there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ramsey. Everyone, there's going to be cake on the floor. Just laugh about it.
Thank you for watching Tales with Taylor. Please make sure you like and subscribe to the Financial Potion YouTube channel to never miss an episode.